So I think what I'd like to do is maybe ask Michael some questions, um, and then we can kind of go back and forth too. But yeah, I agree that I just love seeing your work together. I really think it complements each other.
I do too.
And it's too bad we couldn't have it in the gallery, but I think, I love the postcard. It's so beautiful. How you're both so animated. So that, which actually brings me to some things I want to touch on with Michael's work, because I know, Michael, from your interview with Collarworks, I think that was about a year ago. That was a great interview. I recommend everybody listen to that. So you had talked about an early interest in cartoons and animation, and then in your young adult life kind of moved towards abstraction, and now in your more recent years, you're coming back to the figure. And especially what I'm seeing in your really recent work, they're really kind of busting out of the frame now. You have these figures that are kind of, I love the way they define the space. They're in there and they're saying, it's a square, it's a painting. But then there's two, I'm going to try to do the screen share again. There's two paintings that are your most recent in the show. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to pull up this one. And do you see that? Does everybody see that now?
It is still just on the library there.
Okay. And is that any better?
Yep.
Okay. So like this one, and there's another one I'll go to in a second. They feel actually a lot more animated. There's a lot of action in these, and then the other one I'm going to show, he's looking like he's going to walk right out of the frame. And I know from your Instagram account, you're starting to play around with animation. And there's one in there that I loved for today. It's, I think, Snow in the Shadows.
Yeah.
We had snow this morning. It was perfect. Oh. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about, well, wherever you want to go with that, your interest in animation or?
Yeah, I'll start with sort of where you began. I think growing up as a kid with lots of access to television and cartoons and things like that in the 80s and 90s, that imagery just sort of like gets embedded in us. And I think so as a kid, I was often drawing and doodling, and lots of silly looking things were happening all the time on paper. But when I went to college, I got very serious, and it seemed like time to like do something very serious. And so it was all still life and art history and abstraction and things like that. And I think as an adult, or in my 30s and early 30s, I tried to get the figure back into my work a number of times, but it was doing things I wasn't really comfortable with. It felt like it always had a message that was out of control, or I couldn't quite understand the parameters of. And so it would always get painted over again and just end up being a still life, or end up being something slightly less recognizable. So I've got a real interest in like sort of the symbolism of still life, and then the material qualities of abstraction and paint as a material that means something in and of itself. And now, just like within the last 4 years, the figure has come in to be, an occupier of that space, and a kind of self-conscious occupier of that space, the space of a painting, which to me feels, dealing with abstraction and dealing with still life, you're always, or, as an artist or as a painter, you're always very self-aware of the constraints of your material and the things we sort of take for granted, a rectangle when we're working on a piece of paper or working on canvas. And I felt like I wanted that to be, well, it wasn't really a choice. The figures just are self-aware of their surroundings by nature of the way that I negotiate their position in there. They're oftentimes the entire body is in the frame, and I've tried painting figures that are cropped in different ways. I do a series that has heads as a focus, but if it's arbitrarily cropped, I don't something, it loses attention for me. And so they're almost always entirely there. And that produces a challenge and an obstacle for me that ends up sort of self-determining some of how the space gets organized.
Mm-hmm.
And these two that you were just showing do feel, they don't have, some of my works have like an extra border around the outside to like double reinforce the confines of the painting space. But the last two don't. They don't have that. And particularly that one with the swinging arms really feels like he's stepping forward into our space a little bit. Yeah, that
is that up? Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't always see what you guys see. I'm going to pull up the folder that has your, and I want to pick, it's hard for me to see what I'm looking at here. Sorry, give me 1 second here. I can't, I'm sorry, technical difficulties. Let me just, move this. Okay, here's something that I find really fascinating. So the heads here.
Now this is still on the library for the moment.
Oh, it is. Okay. Whoops. Is that working? Do you see your?
Oh, yep.
There. Okay. Woo. Sorry. Now I can't see anything, but I know what's in. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I love that you've got this brain space going on. This way you play with space with these heads. And there's always also, which makes me also think of cartoons, they're often going in that direction towards, towards the right. So it's like, what's happening next?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a strange, I mean, this is a series that started absolutely by, most everything I do starts essentially by accident and then just gets filtered out over time. If it just keeps happening, then it becomes something that has a big presence in my work. And this series of faces that then have a still life strangely superimposed into the space was just I get up in the morning and I do drawings at the breakfast table, and just to, get something done during the day, because it can get busy, I start with that. And one day, yeah, just two drawing types came together, the still life and the head. And I just kept following that thread. I'm interested, I think, in these is in the way that the space flips back and forth. And I think the one with sort of gray hair and a yellow skull, I can kind of sense a depth of space between the orange and the yellow skull, yet the side of the face is flat. And so this kind of spatial contradiction, I think, is fun. It's essential and inherent in painting, and it's something I'm always drawn to. It's like the simplest trick, but it's something that I find really exciting every time. And and that same sort of contradiction leads me to sort of like, I don't know, sometimes scrape paint over the top of a picture and let it be there as this secondary element that is giving a second expression to the materials, approaching it one way and then approaching it another way, and letting those two things kind of sit together. Yeah, and so and they're cartoony and strange, and I think that's because naturalism isn't that interesting to me, or it's something it's not that it isn't interesting to me, it's that I'm not drawn to it when I'm working. And so to stretch something like a nose or to compress something, to me is an exploration of shape and just the formal qualities that I enjoy manipulating, and then it ends up holding a special kind of meaning because of that distortion.
Right. Very interesting. I apologize. There were some people in the waiting room, and I thought I had it set to admit all, and it turns out that function didn't work very well. I'm still admitting people, and I don't see the admit all control anymore. So I apologize for those that were left out. I see your messages now, and that hopefully you're in. There was a feature that said admit all, and I thought we got everybody in, but apparently people were waiting. So sorry about that. And I'm not sure which screen is sharing right now.
It is the head still.
It is. I think I want to pull up one more from your, is this sharing? Hold on one second.
Library.
Library again. This one is, oh, okay, sorry. Well, there's a couple here I could, well, these are really fun. Is this being shared now? The two drawings?
No, still the library for the moment. Oh, there it is.
Okay, there we go.
The delay, yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of along the lines of the, similar to the animations that you started playing around with.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I looked at that snow in the shadows this morning, yeah. I was actually thinking of Charles Birchfield.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's great. Yeah. One of my favorites, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's all that action. How do you depict that action, you know, in through drawing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for me, it's like just about stretching shapes. And these two drawings that you've pulled up, they're really good examples of the quick drawing that I would do in the morning just to warm up. So these are brush and ink drawings. Mm-hmm. And they're 24 inches by 18 inches, but they're very fast. And so they don't take more than 10 or 15 minutes to make. And then I just have a stack and I can move through them very quickly. And it's a little bit like doing any kind of exercise in the morning. It kind of gets me feeling more awake and
well, that's pretty impressive. Anything I make in 20 minutes is not. It's not.
Well, it's a technique I've learned out of necessity. If I don't give myself a nice stack of blank paper and make myself just do it kind of quick, I can make everything very stodgy. I can make everything very labored and the same looking. And mm-hmm. So if I force myself or if I follow the impulse to be quick and intuitive, I can end up producing things that look very different. And I am the one who sees my work most, and so it has to look different to me. I have to see it fresh and new all the time. And so I like to try a different approach. Something's fast, something's very slow.
Right.
And backward.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the images for a minute because now I can see you. When I share, I can't see anything. Hopefully I will get better at this and figure out what I'm doing wrong. I'm just going to take a quick look at our question, our chat, and people are saying hello. So that's great. So one thing, we're talking about your, like a 20-minute drawing, and so I'm thinking about like studio practice, and especially, I think we have a lot of artists in the audience too, and everybody's kind of like, I don't know. Oh, you have all this time at home now. Well, I know you didn't, because you're teaching, and it's crazy. And you're teaching all of your, everything through Zoom, which is a whole new thing everybody needs to learn. Hopefully you'll get a little bit of a break soon from all that. But it's a very high anxiety time if you listen to the news. And I mean, it's just where we are as a society, as a globe. And so how do you guys handle that kind of anxiety when you're in your studio? I'm just throwing out, I don't know how to, exactly ask the question, but it's a unique time, and sometimes it's a little crippling for everybody's a little different. It's not always easy with anxiety to be productive in the studio.
Absolutely. I'll go first, and then I'll try to also be brief. I find my ambition can really go down to just like taking it easy, trying to remain like cool. But the new series of animations is a good example. Sometimes the work has to just take a new form. where my attention, I have to allow my attention to go to a new place. And so that series of animations you were mentioning that have been posted on Instagram are a little bit an expression of one of the ways that I start my day, which is distinctly not checking the news, but opening my window and listening to the birds, which to me feels like I need that 45 minutes of time of just sort of sitting and writing and drawing. And so the sound and my sketches at that time of day have made up that new group of works that are on Instagram, those little animations. And so I can find it difficult to go back to the same kind of work when so much has changed. But the great thing about, I don't know, having experience making artwork is that you learn how to do things in a new way and be responsive to things. And so that's been a tool that I've used. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Hey, Lee, how about you? How do you either?
I always work.
Yeah.
I always work.
Yeah.
We live on 10 acres and have 3 buildings and a lot of gardens. And, you know, to be honest, the last couple of years, I have really wanted to be careful about going into town all the time, you know, accumulate errands and then go for 1/2 day. And I've been really looking forward to just not having to go out and to be able to work and create what we're living in here. And so that hasn't changed that much. But I'm very mental about the times that we're going through and very hurt and sad about all of 2020, everything. And it feels good to create when everything feels like it's collapsing.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, when I was still stitching, I had cancer, and I talked about that cancer a lot. And it was very topical then, back in the 90s, and the Lancet magazine ran an article, and I really feel like creating my work and talking about that work helped heal me. And so I look to art to provide an opportunity to add to the day in some way, to prove that I was here.
Mm-hmm.
I made something. There it is. You can pick it up. And that's important to me.
I find that what both of you said, I find to be very inspiring, because, you know, art is, it's about being human, and it, you know, it can't wait.
It can't.
You know, I mean, if you think about the history of various times, I mean, there's always something going on. I mean, this is a little bit new for a lot of us because something like this hasn't happened in 100 years or I don't know, but there's working through it. And I find that very inspiring. I do know I've had many conversations with artists lately, and for some it's kind of a little crippling. But I think that at some point you work through it. And I know as a cancer survivor, I know because we've talked on the phone a little bit, and yeah, working through it is definitely the way to go.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to just take a peek at this chat thing because I do see a question for Lee, a few questions for Lee about scale. What scale was earlier sewn work? And are these the scale they seem as suggested by the chair legs? That is perhaps about 18 to 36 inches. Have you made any that are either much smaller or much larger?
I'm making some much larger now. A friend of mine, who I hope is on this call, an art curator, challenged me to work bigger. And so I'm making a series of works now, still using chair parts, but I found a big, fabulous oval coffee table. And So my coffee table parts are providing the stretch that will make my chair legs and chair aprons, you know, conform to a much bigger composition. So I'm trying that, and it's not bad, but you should see the amount of sculptures I have in my barn is unbelievable. And now they're getting bigger. The scale of my stitch pieces, they were framed with big mats. If you Google my name, I'm sure you can find some. And they averaged around 6 by 8, 5 by 8, about that size. So very small. This is the biggest I've ever worked.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Change is good. So,
change is good.
Yep. Yeah. So let's see. I don't know if I'm missing any questions in here. Oh, we have a new message. Sorry guys, I'm so not very good at this. I see a new message, but does anybody else?
Oh.
Do you see? Oh, there it is. Michael, from Brian, can you talk a little bit about the humor in your work? Is that something you strive for?
Yeah, I can talk about that. It isn't. No, it isn't.
Oops.
Yeah, no, it just gets in there, and I'm happy. You know, I think it is. I don't self-consciously see my work as being really reflective of myself in a forward way, but I have a sense of humor, and it does come into the work every time. And I can make something that I think is very serious looking, and it is not very serious looking. It looks goofy and strange, and I think it is. And I think it's, you know, it's not that I want to get rid of that humor in any way. I love it, and I seek it out in the world, but it's not something I consciously pursue. It's just something I embrace once it's there.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah.
Can I say something, Michael?
Yes.
So I said I looked at your work all morning, and I love the word earnest that you used on your website, or maybe one of the series is named Earnest.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the figures, I think about the sexes a lot, and it's been my experience that men try to help and take care of problems. And I saw your male figures, especially those 2 line drawings, which I'm so glad we saw. Men contorting to try to make things okay, to take care. And the box that they're within might be a relationship. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know that I try not to think too much about the figure's ambitions, but they are generally striving to create a kind of meaning within their constraints, for sure. And that is, like I said, even though I don't think of the work as being expressing myself, it's essentially what I am trying to do in a drawing or a painting, is have some meaning come out despite the fact that it is just some ink on paper and just a cartoony looking figure kind of like bending in a weird way. I do think that there is an innate, like that contorting and that being earnest within that space is essentially a way that I feel about myself, and also something that comes out in those figures, even though it's not, I don't do it in order to express something about myself. It's just there.
I don't see how you can help it. I mean, once you realize that these things are coming out and it's your style, there you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
It's like that, you know, however hard you try, you can't get away from yourself.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're earnest, and they're just, because I think your pretty daily practice of working, you're very, you have a, you know, you're very disciplined about working all the time, and things just happen when you do that. You know, it's Malcolm Gladwell's whatever 3,600 hours. You know, you just do, you work, you just keep working, and you're going to come through that work. And but they are often, they're fun too. I mean, but they're serious. I mean, how you get all of that in there is remarkable, because I also think there's another side. It's kind of the plight of being confined, and how do you work within your limits?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think those contradictions are very exciting, and I think they're at home in artworks like these. And yeah, I do. I think I have a lot of, I don't know. I think we can be very concerned about stuff, and we can think about big things, but then we're also very limited. And even that earnestness, that earnest desire to know some truth about something it's very silly in the end, because it's very self-aggrandizing, and it's goofy. It doesn't make a lot of sense in a practical way at all, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think all of that stuff tends to get packed into the work, just like you said, through making it all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you actually said something similar to that in your conversation at Colorworks. Like, here's this crazy practice of making art, and you know, at times it can feel futile, you know what, but it's not, you know. And so, but I think artists are, you know, in good times, you know, struggle with what does this mean, and what am I doing? And you're alone in your studio working, so you have to listen to the voices in your head. And but if you keep at it, things happen. So, and you both are a perfect example of your commitment to your art is it's I appreciate it so much. I value your work so much. I am just inspired and impressed by what you've done. Let me just check and see if I don't always have things in front of me. I don't know if, does anyone have any questions? Laura, can you talk about how you determined that Michael and Lee's work would be good together? Michael and Lee were part of the annual call, and I worked with a gallery committee. I'm having a blank moment here of who was on that committee, but we just, you know, we spend a lot of time. We can do it remotely now through Submittables, so everybody can really take a good look at all the submissions. And there was just something, again, I keep using the word animated. I mean, all work is animated to some level, but their work was different, but yet there's this sense of still standing strong, you know, like with Lee, you know, and Michael's like, they're stuck in the box, and like, so there's a bit of a narrative going on. And I don't really know that I really saw it as clearly. It was maybe more intuitive, but I think in the end, you know, learning more about their work, it makes a lot of sense to me to show them together, even though we couldn't do it physically in the gallery. You know, I think it would have been a fantastic show having Lee's work in there, but you know, we can do this on our website. We have images, yeah. And you can imagine, we do have some install shots of Michael. Michael went in last week and installed the show. And on our Facebook and Instagram, we have some shots of that, and I will eventually get them on the website as well. So, but I'm sorry, I'm not remembering I have to give credit to the gallery committee, because we worked as a team, and they unanimously thought that this was a pretty good pairing to put these two artists together. So, oh, here's another one. Lee, there is an element of abstract utility in your work. Is that an apt description? It's very inspirational. So an element of abstract utility.
Utility. Oh, I don't see any utility in the work at all. Sam, can you explain to me your term?
Let's
Or is
see.
that a thing that's going on in the world and I don't know about it?
I don't know about it either. So let's give Sam a second to maybe chat something else. He's probably typing as we speak. Abstract utility.
I want things to be simplified.
Yeah.
I want the chairs most of the time to kind of look like calligraphy, you know, like there's nothing more there than needs to be there. My mother always used to say, put all your jewelry on and then take one thing off.
Right.
And,
well, you actually do talk about, which might be related to this in some way. Well, he says utility in the sense that it's an abstraction of objects that served a function.
well, yeah.
Well, that could be what art does. I mean, but I think
the chairs. I mean, I'm banking off the utility of chairs, and that these are chairs that don't have a seat at the table. You know, as women occupy much fewer important jobs, and we all know that story.
Yeah, or leadership.
Since these are women, I will go to flea markets and I'll find wooden spoons and things like that, or wooden blocks that children play with, and all those things relate to the fact that this abstraction is a woman.
Right.
Adds extra information.
He says, thanks, beautifully said.
I can see that. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, you can see it. Good. Okay. Yeah, I think that was very well put. And there also is a sense of different postures in your sculptures. And I know you've talked in your artist statement a bit about contrapposto and, you know, how a figure stands. Maybe, you know, when you hold a baby, your weight is distributed differently. So yeah, they're very expressive in a kind of posture. They have different postures, each one of them. Yeah. So
just trying to keep standing, you know.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Also beautifully said.
Some of them are challenging. You know, I'll put a couple of legs together in a strange way, and I like it. And they're cemented together, and then the challenge becomes, okay, now what do you do to continue to have this great angle that you love and make it stand up? I mean, there's more stuff you've got to do, and that's where using different materials comes in and makes things different.
Yeah. It seems like you and Michael have a kind of a similar process in a way, in that you don't always know what you're going to end up with.
Oh, no.
Yes, I never know what I'm going to end up with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, Michael, I thought it was very interesting in the slideshow that we put together for you. And I think I might have heard you talk about this before, that you don't always know what you're doing, and sometimes you'll just take like a piece of wood and slide it across the painting, and like, just, you know, I just love that, you know, that taking a chance.
Yeah, it's something that comes out of necessity, really, because I know very well what my work will look like if I just do it all very intentionally, and it isn't good. It's not good. It isn't interesting, and it isn't good. And I have to, like, I'm inclined and I'm motivated to work and to control it. And then before it's finished, I've got to mess it up and then get to a place where that sends me in a different direction and do something. And then, the animations are actually those newest things that I've been working on are a good example of that too, because every frame gets erased entirely or very nearly. And I never know what's going to happen the next frame until it's erased. It's not planned. If I know what I'm going to do, I'm very bored, and I don't have enough drive to do something that bores me.
Right. I think that's beautifully said. I find that very inspiring. And I take that to heart, because I think that's where, when you are not always in control, it's where the real stuff, the real you can happen. Because if you're controlling so much, you're not going to have the surprises. And
Yeah.
so artists really do need to do that. We have another question. Where did you all grow up, and does that influence your work? That's from Terry.
Lee, you can go first. I was just.
I grew up in St. Louis. Came to South Carolina to take a teaching position in about 1981. I've lived in Japan. I've traveled a lot. I'm not Southern, but here I am. So it's cheap to live here.
And you've been in South Carolina for a while.
1980, 81, yeah.
Right, you moved there for
longer here than anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were teaching for years down there too.
Yes.
Yes. And how about you, Michael?
Yeah, I grew up in northwestern Pennsylvania, far away from cities and far away from, you know, abundant prosperity. I spent a lot of time in brambly woods and down in riverbanks and turning rocks over and looking at what weird stuff was there. And I think that I felt very, my mind felt like it could really move around in those environments and to think about things. And the environments that I end up with in my work now, I think, go in that direction, go towards foliage and bramble and even the layers of material, the abstraction and the stuff that I get that I lay on, I think of as that just sort of naturally occurring stuff that piles up that you can sort of ponder about and think about and look at how it lays. So yeah, I think that rural environment and the thinking through that space definitely penetrates into the work now.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the skulls, Michael.
You know, the skulls are something that came from my time doing still life painting as in my 20s and 30s. And it was a way of getting, like I said, I tried to get the figure into my work a lot, but it just never worked. And so a skull was a still object that didn't snake all around the canvas, but it still had a human presence that was a little bit more forthright than other objects that I might include. And also, I think I do love a symbolic object, and I think that a skull is loaded up with ideas and feelings, and I'm not interested in the one idea or feeling around any one object, but just when they're sort of saturated in a communal understanding about it. I like that. And so the skulls remain sort of tucked in a corner and sort of putting out their vibes.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they're pretty potent.
It's true.
Yeah, yeah. So we were going to just do 45 minutes. We've gone a little bit over that, but oh, here's another question from Brian. This is a good one. I actually thought of, so who, if any, are the contemporary artists that you're both looking at these days? This is a good question.
Wow. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I look at contemporary artists these days. I'm even working without criticism. I don't have a crit group. I'm really alone. I did teach art history when I was teaching and love it. But I'm really, I know more about art history than I do about contemporary work.
Mm-hmm.
So
good.
I don't know.
That's a good answer. I mean, I know you're steeped in history. So, and I know that you're looking. I mean, I know Picasso is somebody that you were.
Oh yeah.
A huge fan of, as many of us are. How about you, Michael? What do you think?
You know, I guess I think about, there are two artists that come to mind, and it happens to me too. You say, oh, name some contemporary artists, and I think, You know, but
Michael's blank.
Shara Hughes is a contemporary painter that's really lush landscapes right now. And she was making work when she lived in Georgia that had the figure and was sort of lots of different weird contrasting bits coming together. And I think I would also maybe mention Amy Silman, who's just always fascinating to me. So those two, I think about a lot. But the truth is, really, I can call to mind Instagram handles much more quickly than I can call to mind someone's full name. I have to be careful that I don't think someone's name is their Instagram handle, because the way that I see artwork now.
Yeah, Instagram's a whole new thing, which I think, same here. I've discovered a lot of artists through Instagram, and it's not ideal looking on the phone, but you can use your imagination. So that's a good question. And Brian, I just want to send you an apology. You were in the waiting room for a while. I'm sorry about that. Here's another, see, I'm not sure, I'll have to figure out this function a little bit better. Looks like Lisa, I'm sorry you were in the waiting room. If anybody has any feedback to send us about maybe some ways to do this better, hopefully I will brush up on my Zoom skills. I did press admit all, and for some reason it just did not. We had people in the waiting room, and I apologize for that. But it's just about 5. So I just want to thank Michael and Lee. It has been such a pleasure working with you two and preparing this and putting your slideshows together and getting to know both of you. Your work is so inspiring, and as people and talking with you and planning this, you're inspiring people who Lee, I wish you didn't live so far away, and Michael, I know I'll see a little more of you because you're part of the upstate artist community. But it has been so great to have this opportunity with you guys. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Great experience.
I really appreciate it. So I just want to see, is there any, I think we've covered everything. So if for the audience, if you want to check out lakegeorgearts.org, there's some links to, I'm going to have this recording on there eventually. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry, Lee, but I realized we weren't recording in the first couple of minutes, so we missed some of your talk in the beginning. But I think we've got enough footage to have a nice movie for people to visit who unfortunately got stuck in the waiting room too long. People are saying thank you here. Thank you. You guys are great. Thanks. So everybody's thanking you. Wonderful. Thanks, audience, for showing up and letting us practice on you. We may have to do this again. We don't know. We could do it, again, just even if things open up. We don't really know what's going to happen. There's another. Okay. Great job. All right. Thanks, you guys. This is fantastic. So visit the website, learn a little bit more about Lee and Michael. And there's the snow is all melted. So hopefully everybody can have a little time outside, maybe go for a walk and enjoy the sun and the birds. And thank you.
All right.
Thank
All
you.
right. I'm going to end this meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.